from the admin of Woodworking UK, been asked to do just a beginner's guide to bandsaw boxes. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview here today. Won't be too much, a few bits and pieces just to show you. I'll give you a bit of background on myself. I started about 5 years ago, probably about 6 years ago. My dad gave me my first bandsaw. He'd got given it from somebody and he thought I might want it. At that time I did no woodwork. This shed here was built for my motorbike, which I don't have any longer. And me and my dad built this. And when I just had a very small hobby. It had a 3-inch cut. It was a record power little hobby bandsaw. That was what was given, and that was where the boxes first started. On YouTube, I work in healthcare, so I know nothing. I am not trained in any woodwork. I wasn't even allowed to do it at school because it was a boys' subject at school. So I sort of came from no background, apart from my dad's a wood turner, so I've always had the availability of wood and stuff like that, but I'd never really made anything. So anyway, about 6 years ago I got this small bandsaw, and that's where it all started. At first I started just creating small shapes myself with a little drawer in it. They were often an open box, which means, you know, you cut into it, it wasn't completely round and sealed. There was like gaps at either end, probably quite similar to that type of open-ended box. But that's where it all started, and at that time I only had 1/4 inch blades, so the shapes had to be, for one, I wasn't very good on a bandsaw. The shapes were often wobbly, but not that that ever put me off. I was so delighted with what I was creating, because from the very first box I could create something. So I wasn't too bothered about any of that. Sorry, that's my cat who gets into every video I ever do. So I started off with that. Just had a 3-inch cut. I used to laminate pieces of wood together and make small little boxes. I don't actually have, because everything, I've been lucky enough that everything that I've ever made I have sold. So I don't have, I went to work one day and the girls were asking me what I was doing. And when I showed them, one girl said to me, "Can I have them all?" And she actually gave them out as gifts. They were just small, and I wasn't charging a lot because they were far from perfect at the time. But anyway, I just wanted to give you a little background from where I come from. So what I do is not probably the way that you should do things, but it's always worked for me, and I still have all my fingers. So now I have, this is the main bandsaw here. This was second hand. I've been given everything, virtually, or I've bought it very cheaply. I didn't buy it. I've no new tools in here apart from bench saws and stuff, but as far as the bandsaw boxes, there's nothing new, and it had to be on the cheap because I didn't have a lot of money. So I think I bought this for about £30 or £40. Maybe I was given this one. And this is the one that this is not the most powerful of bandsaws. I do cut through, well, I cut for the full length of the blade for some of these boxes. I mean, this one here is a pretty tall box, and this is all cut on this bandsaw. For oak, probably about 4 inches. Well, it's probably about 4 inches is probably the maximum I would do. Not that it wouldn't cut through it, it would. But you have to be so gentle with it when you're doing any curves. So when I see a lot, I mean, if I was to buy a new bandsaw now, I'd buy one that could take an 1/8 inch blade, because not all small bandsaws do. They take 1/4 inch, and that was one of the reasons I wanted to go through this today, because this machine, I'm sure, shouldn't be taking an 1/8 inch blade, but it does, and it takes it and it holds it, and it's perfect. It does everything I need it to do. So yeah, I always use this one. There's always an 1/8 inch in this particular bandsaw. I'm lucky enough to have two. And the other one, well, it's a beautiful, powerful machine, but it doesn't hold an 1/8 inch blade as well. It just runs off. So anyway, so what you need is either a 1/4 inch blade. I think if you're just starting out, start with a 1/4 inch blade and keep the cuts on a box. I'll show you boxes that you can do with a 1/4 inch blade. any bandsaw, it doesn't matter what you get hold of, it'll do what you're doing. I've not really, I mean, I'm sure this says it's a heavy duty, but even my small 3-inch one cut through everything that I actually put through it. I've not actually never been able to cut through anything that I've made. So anyway, so you need blades, 1/4 inch, tough saws in the UK, best place ever, because it doesn't matter what bandsaw you've got, you can put your own sizes in. But he has a massive selection. The best blades I've ever cut with, they last the longest. When you first start cutting bandsaw boxes, especially on the 1/8 inch blade, you will find you will break them. And that's all about the way that you're pushing the wood into the blade. Look, maybe you won't have that problem. I came from nothing, so I had to learn everything myself. So yeah, so need a little bandsaw, doesn't matter what it is. 1/4 inch blade is absolutely fine. For sanding, that used to be the hardest part, was the hand sanding, until I got hold of one of these. This could be put into a drill. My father actually has one of the angle holders for a drill, and he has this on his bench on a drill, and this is perfect for doing all the curves. It wouldn't do some of the more intense ones for these, but for all the starter boxes, like this box and that, this is perfect for sanding it. I mean, you can do that on a bench sander, or you can do it on a palm sander, or whatever, the bottoms, but the curves can all be done with this. These are about £10 off Amazon or whatever, and I have a pillar drill, so I put it into that, and I think about every 6 months I just buy a new one because they're so cheap. So that's one of the best sanding tools I have. So you need your bandsaw, and you need something to sand it with, and a selection of grits. I only ever sort of go up to 400, 600 grit. For finishing, I use, this is my preference, I don't like the feel of oil. I've done some oiled boxes in the past, and I can't touch them because I just do not like the feel of oil. Oil looks beautiful on the boxes, but what I do, I get the same look, so I'm quite happy with it. I use sand sealer. It's chestnut I happen to use because I could buy it in great big containers, and I use cellulose thinners, which I buy from the car shop, and I think I get 5 litres. This is the one here. I get 5 litres quality thinners for about £10, I think it is. And I just use an old coffee jar, and I mix them 50-50. I do about 2 coats of sand sealer, and I sand about 600 in between them. And then I use auto spray lacquer. I don't put it on overly thick. I put it on just really to seal the woods. I don't particularly like a shine. And you don't have to have a shine when you're doing lacquer. If you're putting it on that thick, to be honest, you're probably going to get runs and everything in it. It should always go on in really light coats, and I usually do 2 coats to make sure it's covered, 2 really light, just brushing coats on it, and then I sand it at 600, and then I put the final coat on it. And then I do have a Beal buffing wheel, and on some of them I will use the Beal buffing wheel. The selection of 3, it just gets out any imperfections with your finish. So that's what you need. I'm trying to think, is there anything else you need? But I don't think there really is. You can start with that. Obviously you would. If you go into Google, it's always better either to draw an outline on of what you're cutting by hand, or I go into Google. A lot of what I do is out there. It's mainstream. It's available to everybody. I go into Google and I put Bandsaw box plans in, or even just Bandsaw boxes. And if you go into images, you will find there's lots of plans in there. And then I just use a spray adhesive, a stick and spray adhesive, stick it onto the wood, and you can cover them with sellotape. If you've got complex boxes, which I'll show you more of in a minute, then you'll probably want to put sellotape on the top, but you don't need to. And then take your piece of wood and cut it. Start with shapes like this. This is a great 1/4 inch box. easy shapes to go in and out. There's lots that are just like that. I'll show you a couple of pictures in a second or two of boxes that I've made with 1/4 of an inch. But start with something simple. If you start with something complex, it's just all going to go wrong. So yeah, start with something simple. And basically your first on the block is to turn it on its side and cut the back off. Then you put it on the base like that for cutting your outline shape. I would do on that, and then I would cut the interior shape. You then have a thick block, which will be something like that. You get this block, you cut your back and your front off first. That will leave you with another solid block like this. You can then put your lines on it for drawers, and that's your drawers cut out, and then you glue your front and your back on, and you end up with that. Really straightforward. A lot of people get quite complicated when they look at them, but they're so easy to do. They're one of the easiest things I think to make. That's how I got into it. I think that's basically what you need, but I'm going to show you a couple of pictures now of boxes that can be done with 1/4 of an inch. I don't have a lot of boxes made, so I need to make sure I put the camera here. I don't have a lot of boxes made at the minute. There we go. That box was actually made, believe it or not, with 1/4 of an inch blade, but it's a very complex box. Don't start with that one. These types of boxes here, this is a box with a candle bit, very easy to make with 1/4 of an inch. It's just basically 2 cuts and that curve up there. Doesn't need to be anything fancy. Virtually all of these boxes on this page is here. There's that one's first. These can all be made with 1/4 of an inch. The wood that I've used here, and it is actually one of my favourite woods, is Douglas fir. It's actually a soft wood, cuts really easy, gets some beautiful shapes in it, and it's really effective. I quite like it if you've got knots and stuff in it. Just make sure you seal your knots. You can get more complex and start doing bows. I do these on a bandsaw, but it is much easier to do them on a scroll saw, but you can do designs like that. The type of box that I'm actually completing just now, I mean, you remember I'm 6 years in, so I would definitely say you're talking more advanced. I actually got somebody to draw the picture for me of a tree, because I love trees, and then I went in and cut this box out. I'll try and show you. These drawers, this is just the base of skeleton. Even with a big box, I just photocopy them, put them all onto there. These have all been cut. These are actually into small drawers now. They all need sanding. This box is nowhere near finished. But yeah, you can get as complex as that, but this needs an 1/8 of an inch blade. There's no way you could cut any of those boxes with 1/4 of an inch. So you would need 1/8 of an inch with that. Another design I have, this actually is for a tree box. So these are individual floating boxes. They're a bit more complex. Got a fine cut here because it actually goes onto a stem which holds them individually. There's 5 or 6 of them, and they're held on a stem, so you do them individually. But you've got your front of your box, which would need magnets to hold that bit on, and when you open it, you then have your box actually pulls out with that. So that's another design. Getting a little bit more square. These are all done on bandsaws. This is ring boxes. Did this for a Kickstarter a couple of years back. Very easy design. It's basically started with a 2x2 piece of wood. This was a 2x2, and then these were just 1/2 inch slices on the side, and in the 2x2 I just cut the shape round like that, and then I just did a little loop for the drawer, and I put a brass rod in the back of it, and you get a little bandsaw box. You could do that with a 1/4 inch blade. I have done some more complex stuff. This was done for an Instructables competition, and it was Purple Week, and the Instructable t-shirts I was a finalist in this. Didn't win anything, but I got a t-shirt. Was very delighted. This is held by magnets. There is a box in here, 2 massive magnets on there. So, and then that's that bit. You take your finger off with the magnets on that, so you can get all fancy with that. Beautiful bits of wood, and wood just shapes to anything that you want it to shape to. So I hope this video is alright. Like I say, just a quick overview. So all you really need is your bandsaw, your 1/4 inch blade, and something to sand it with, and a wee piece of wood, and you're on your way. And like I say, Google bandsaw box plans, or even bandsaw boxes. Go into images and you'll get your templates there. Anything else you needing to know, just drop it in the comments, and I'll keep checking back onto Woodworkers UK just to make sure I answer any questions. And thanks admin for asking me to do this, and yeah, hope that helps. Cheers.